Are you seeking a better way to accelerate your sales, to scale your business, to live a life with no limits? Accelerate Sales Podcast features global experts who have cracked the code to recurring revenues with proven sales systems and get you on the fast track to scaling. Now let's accelerate your sales with today's episode.
Welcome to the Accelerate Sales Podcast. So in today's episode, you're going to learn three key things. One is, what is the difference between a patent, a trademark, and a copyright? And most importantly, some practical examples. The second thing is a really cool way of getting some leads. And the third thing is some great ways of getting your potential clients into calls. And there's some excellent examples there. So welcome. If you're a first-time listener and you love what you hear, please subscribe. And if you're a regular, always welcome those iTunes reviews. And I really appreciate the people that are doing it. It means the world to me. Always take notes. It's completely up to you. There is an excellent summary that we do, and that's why I look down a lot of these interviews to get those summary notes right for you. There'll be all the links, etc. in there, and you can get a full transcription at paulhigginsmentoring.com. So today's guest has started several 7 and 8 startups and has been very successful in their own right, but they also love helping people to protect their intellectual property to save you both time and money. And it was just a fantastic interview, and I know you're going to love this one. So what I'll do now is hand you over to Devon Miller from Miller IP Law. Great to have you here, Devon.
Well, thank you for having me. Excited to be here.
Yeah, I'm the same. And as we said in the pre, I'm very, very envious of your fantastic branding. So, I've got to lift my game, but well done for you. And I know that I said in the intro your company, but I'm glad that other people during this podcast, if you're watching it on video, you'll certainly get to see it. So why don't we kick off with, who are your perfect clients? Who do you love to work with?
Yeah, so it's probably, it's kind of ironic, or maybe not ironic, that I am my perfect client in the sense that I love startups and small businesses, and that's the clients I love to work with. So, my ideal client is going to be anything from a solo inventor, garage inventor, just getting up and going, to a startup that's fun, either pre-seed round or pre-funding or funding, to a small business. Now, not to say I don't work with medium or larger sized businesses, but if I were to say, hey, this is my ideal client, it's one that is a startup or the small business. And the main reason being is that I just, that's the place where once you get if you're too small, you're typically not far enough along that we can help you. If you're too big, then we are a much smaller cog in a big wheel. We don't really have impact. We don't really have guidance, and it's just not as fun. But if you get kind of that sweet spot, then we get to see all the cool stuff that the people are coming up with. This is their one shot, and this is what they're looking to build and what they're going to, and we can actually have an impact on their business to help them.
Yeah, look, and, I'm very similar. I love working with the actual founders, the owners. They've got all the upside if they get it right, and, that passion, they really care about their clients. So, very similar. And, for you, certainly around some of those smaller businesses, what are some of the key problems that you help them solve?
Yeah. So Miller IP Law is an intellectual property law firm. So intellectual property generally includes patents, trademarks, copyrights, and then we also do a few business related things. So in the US, LLCs or business formations, we'll do like an NDA, non-disclosure agreement, or an employee IP agreement, those type of things. So it's usually pretty well patents, trademarks, copyrights, and then some business related things that support that. And that's really just the services we love to offer, because I really look at our focus is helping startups and small businesses protect and grow their business. So usually if it's kind of anything within there, that's what we focus on.
Yeah, brilliant. And, I suppose the most obvious thing, because, a lot of people hear the words patents, copyright, et cetera, but they don't always know what the differences are. So just give us a quick, elevator pitch of what the differences are between each of those.
No, absolutely. Yeah. That's an easy question. I mean, I'll have clients that come in and say, oh, I got this great invention. I need to go trademark. And I say, well, that's great. You have a good invention. You're actually going to want a patent, or vice versa. So it's a really quick level set. starting with what is intellectual property. So intellectual property is an umbrella term, so kind of incorporates multiple different things underneath it, which include patents, trademarks, copyright. So patents are going towards inventions. If you create something that does something, it has a functionality, that falls under patent. So it can be software, it can be hardware, it can be electronic, but anything that kind of does something, an invention. Trademarks are going to go for branding. So if you're to think of, anything that's really associated with branding, a name of a company, a name of a product, a logo, a catchphrase, kind of anything that incorporates with their brands really fall under trademarks. And then copyrights are going to be for creative. So something that kind of has that creative nature to it. So a painting, a photo, a book, a movie, anything that's going to be kind of on that creative nature falls under copyright. So if you're to think, this is a quick summary, patents are for inventions, trademarks are for brands, copyrights are for creatives.
Yeah, great. And how's crypto? I'll use crypto as a broad term, but I think it's NFTs, etc. How's that sort of working with books? I've heard even now that even memberships, you might be able to buy into a membership as an example. So not just be a member, but also have a part of the business. Are you doing much work or see much change in that space?
It depends on how. So NFT, I guess it seems it's a fairly broad term. It can mean different things. Yeah. We have done stuff more on like Bitcoin or cryptocurrency as an example, more so on the technology side. So not as much on the copyright side, but more for how do you, as an example, you interact with a bank and make cryptocurrency work with a bank because they were starting to get into it, or how do you account for it? How do you apply it? And some of that kind of behind the scenes stuff that you see with crypto. On the patent side, we have clients that do that, and we've got into that. On the copyright side, now when you get into NFTs, it still feels like it's kind of the Wild West in the sense that people really don't know. People don't know what they are, let alone, what to do with them type of a thing. And they're like, well, give you an example. I think it was one of the more recent ones was there's a video that came out several years ago. It was Charlie Bit Me. And it was one of the big ones. It was on the internet. It was on YouTube for a while. And I'm sure if you went and searched it, unless they've taken it down. The reason I was going to say it used to be up there for a while, and they actually talked about pulling that down and having the original as an NFT. In other words, they're saying you can be the only one that owns it. You can decide what to do with it. And so it's shifting now. Can you do that? Yeah, you can own a copyright. You can decide what you want to do with it, but how that works legally and what kind of agreements and what the usage is, and can people split it, or is it just one owner? And how do you do it if people split it? And how do you derive income? It just gets much more complicated, and it also gets to an area to where there really isn't well-defined rules yet, and it's kind of one of those that the legal system generally lags behind. Usually, it'll have the business, technology, the marketplace is ahead. And then as new things come out, then the legal system's kind of figuring out, okay, now what do we do with that? So we kind of have the business and, everything out in front, and legal is just starting to figure it out.
Yeah. Okay. All right. Great. Well, if we go into, I suppose out of the three, I think, trademarks and copyright are probably the two that, my audience are more interested in. And just from a trademark perspective, let's say you've got your trademark, like, for me, paulhigginsmentoring.com is my, key URL, domain name. That's what everything's under. But let's say, like, I've got a membership called the Sales Machine, which, really helps people get leads, particularly through LinkedIn. Now, with something like the Sales Machine, it's quite a generic word, obviously, or two generic words. If I set up a separate website, etc., using Sales Machine, how, if I came to you and asked for advice whether I should or shouldn't trademark that, what would, I know I'm asking you on the spot, and it's, there's a lot of different scenarios, but as a top line, what would you say with a scenario like that, which I commonly see amongst my clients?
No, I'd say all alternatives. If you pay me enough, I'll do whatever you want. No, I wouldn't really say that. That's a horrible answer. So don't take that as your takeaway. But there are attorneys that would say, sure, if you want to trademark it, we'll do whatever you want. But no, the real answer is, if I were to start out and say, should I trademark this or could I trademark it? What I would probably do is, if you're to come in and kind of treat this as that scenario, I would say, well, first of all, let's take a step back and talk about, before should you or could you, or I guess should you is could you. In other words, what are the standards for trademarkability? So there are really a couple primary standards. There's a few other ones, but or two that kind of come up. And one is whether or not you're confusingly similar with another trademark that's already out there. So what does that mean? That means if there was already a sales, let's say you wanted to do sales machines with an S, and there's already a sales machine without an S. Well, if customers were to see both of those side by side, they probably think you guys are the same company, or at least you're associated with each other because it's very similar. Or another example, let's say you wanted to start a athletic wear, sports gear, apparel, and shoes company, and you wanted to do it with the company that was named Nikee. Well, they're probably going to think you're something to do with Nike with one E. And so they're going to say those are confusingly similar. So
yes.
If there's already somebody out there before you register your trademark that has something that's either the same or very similar, then you're going to have kind of one strike against whether or not you can get a trademark. Now, I'll give one caveat to that, which is trademarks work that if you are, or they work with, you have to indicate the categories or the classes of goods and services you're going to use them for. So gave the example of Nike, athletic wear, sports gear, and apparel. And so theoretically, you could go trademark Nike Automotive because they don't do anything with automobiles. Now, Nike is very famous, may not work out, but that kind of an idea of if, you have to say, I can't just get this word and use it for every possible thing, every use in the world and every possible avenue. You have to say, here's how I'm going to use it. And if somebody's doing something completely unrelated to you and wants to use the same word, this trademark system is set up to allow for that. So that's kind of the one thing, confusingly similar, whether or not somebody else is out there that's going to be similar to yours, both in the word and as well in the in what they're doing. Second standard, then I'll take a break, is what's called merely descriptive. And so the other thing that is with trademarks you have to look out for is what with merely descriptive is you can't trademark something to where people are just thinking that you're using a well-known term or a well-known phrase for your product that isn't really identifying with your actual brand. It's just kind of how everybody describes it. So give you an example. Let's say you wanted to go and start the world's best fruit stand, and you're going to sell the world's best fruit. And so you're going to sell apples, and you got the world's best apples. And so you opened your fruit stand and you wanted to name your fruit stand Apple. Well, people probably are going to think your fruit stand is just describing the fruit apple and you're just selling apples and the name of your business really is not Apple. And they're going to think, well, that's just a word that everybody uses when they're selling apples. So you can't do that. Now, if you want to go start a smartphone and consumer electronics named Apple and it has nothing to do with what you're selling, perfectly fine. So you just got to watch out for if you are merely descriptive. In other words, are you just describing what the product or the service you're actually offering is? So now with that all as a long backdrop, you ask, could I get a sales machine? Well, one is are you confusingly similar? I don't know. We could go out, we could search, we could see what else is out there. Let's assume nobody else is out there. You're the first one to come up with it. Nobody's trademarked it, so you're clear on that front. Then the second one is going to be, is it merely descriptive? And that's the one that I would say it's getting at least close. Is it exactly what you're doing? Well, you're not selling an actual machine, yes, but machines are typically a device to do something. And you're saying, machine in a broad level is your machine that is helping to generate sales or generate leads. And so I would say, it's not spot on. You might be able to get a trademark on it, but you are certainly running into that possibility of it being merely descriptive.
Yeah. Okay. And I suppose the flip side is, what is the risk, if someone, I build up this membership, it may be earning me millions of dollars a year, and someone comes along and says, actually, you know what, I got a trademark called sales machine, so you've got to shut down overnight or what have you. Like, how do you, I know it's a bit of a piece of string again, but, how do you prepare yourself for a risk like that other than trademarking it yourself?
Yeah. So I would give a couple different scenarios. One is, let's say you go and you say, okay, I love the words, let's say something that was a bit more unique. We're going to call it sales ABC, just so that way it's not quite as merely descriptive. So we do sales ABC, and you say, I'm going to go out and I'm going to start using it. And you put in a whole bunch of time, money, and effort, and you start marketing it. And then one of two scenarios happens. Either you find out, hey, I was unaware, but before I started using it, someone else was already using it and already trademarked. That's one scenario. The other scenario is you go out and use it. You never trademark it yourself. Somebody else, either because they think you have a great brand or just they thought of it separately than you, and it wasn't anything nefarious, went out and trademarked it first. So they came along after you, but they trademarked it first. So those are two different scenarios that are typically come up. So I'll go through kind of both of those. So the first one, let's say that somebody else was using it before you, then technically you're infringing their trademark. They can come, they can shut you down. They can say, pay us a whole bunch of money. They can say, we're going to sue you, see you in court, and you're probably going to lose because you are infringing their trademark. And all of those are really bad scenarios. Usually what happens, if they are reasonable, they'll send you a cease and desist letter. You'll go to an attorney and say, so how bad is this? And the attorney will look at it. And if it is bad, they'll say, well, what you're probably going to have to do is you're going to get to rebrand your whole company and start over on the branding, which is never a good scenario because let's say you built up a whole bunch of SEO. You have a website. You have all your marketing material. You have everything that's out there. You have your hat. You have your signs in the background. And now you get to change all of that. It is an expensive endeavor, and it's going to harden your business. So that's one of the drawbacks of just simply doing or not worrying about trademarks, and we'll just go start using it, and we'll worry about that later on. It can be pretty detrimental, especially if you put in a lot of time, money, and effort. So that's kind of scenario one. If you go out and you infringe someone's trademark because you didn't know or you didn't do any due diligence or you didn't trademark yourself, not a good thing. Usually get a rebrand. Worst case scenario is you get to pay them a whole bunch of money and then you get a rebrand.
Yeah, right.
Now, the second one is, okay, let's say you were the first. So you came up with sales ABC and nobody else had used it, but you never got around to trademarking, which is a common scenario for a startup or small business. You're saying, hey, we've only got a small budget, and we can either do sales, we can do marketing, we can do HR and hiring our new people, we can do inventory, or we can do legal. Guess which one? A lot of times you get pushed to the back, legal, because you'll say, well, we'll worry about that down the road when we're making some money. And then you just keep growing, but you never really worry about it down the road. And then you come along and you find out that after usually it's like, okay, I've been going in business for 2 or 3 years. And I'm like, well, I should probably do something now. And so you go and you look to see, okay, can we secure the trademark? And we come to find out about a year ago, somebody else trademarked it first. Well, at least in the US, and it's similar throughout most of the world, but all based on US law, what then happens is that because you were using it first, you have some inherent rights. So you can continue to use it because you were the first user. But what it does is it severely limits your rights to be able to grow. So let's say, as an example, you're in Chicago in the US. And so you're in Chicago and you created the world's best pizza joint. Awesome pizza, deep dish pizza, and everybody loved it. So you started, your pizza joint, and you were going along and you built a really great brand, and you never trademarked it. And then 2 or 3 years down the road, say, okay, we've got a great brand. Now we want a franchise. We're going to go and just blow this up and make it worldwide. And so you come along and you find out that you were the first one to use it, but in that era, about a year ago, somebody else filed the trademark for it. Now you've got a scenario where you can keep using it in Chicago. Because you're the first one to use it in Chicago, you can keep using it, but you can't expand out of Chicago, meaning now that person that came and registered the trademark owns it for everywhere outside of Chicago within the US, and you only own it in Chicago. So they can't do it in Chicago, you can't do it anywhere else. So you have some limited rights, but now you're stuck. You can't grow, you can't expand, you can't do anything else, you can't franchise. And so again, not a good scenario. It's better because you can at least keep doing what you're doing, but it limits your business. So those are usually the biggest drawbacks and kind of the scenarios that a lot of times you hit into.
Yeah, look, that's great. And look, I could ask you a million questions, but I know that, you've got a free consult. So if people got a specific scenario, because it's always better to talk specifics, you can, reach out to Devin, and he's kind of going to give his time to help work through those. Just the other quick one is, ideal and, help a lot of cloud partners or tech resellers, right? So for example, they might be reselling Salesforce, Google, Microsoft, Monday, Asana, et cetera, right? So I know when we were a copper partner, and, sometimes it was like, how much do I use their brand to attract clients versus my brand? And it got a bit murky. I just wonder if you have any advice for people listening or watching right now around how much, where's the dotted line drawn, not a solid on most of these things, but a dotted line drawn on how much you can actually really leverage your vendor partner's brand. Yeah.
And circling back really quick, you mentioned that we do a free consult. If anybody has any questions along the way, then go to strategymeeting.com, then grab some time with me to chat right there. Links to my calendar. Now, there's my selfless promotion or plug, but now I'll go to answer your question, which is, there's usually the best way to start is if you're entering into a wholesale agreement or some partnering agreement where you're going to be selling a product for someone else, or you're going to be co-developing it or co-branding it, any of those kind of all those scenarios, including wholesale.
Yes.
Best time to figure all that out is when you're signing the agreement, because that is the point where you can usually define that pretty well. In other words, let's say as an example, can you use their trademark? Can you use their copyrighted material? In other words, their promotional material. If they say yes, maybe, because then you can use it. And a lot of times what they'll do is they'll say yes with the caveat, you get to pay us more. In other words, if you're going to leverage our brand, you're going to leverage all of our materials, that then gets baked into the price that you're paying us. And so sometimes they'll do it for free and they'll say, sure, we don't care. It makes our brand bigger. But if they've already done a lot of work and effort, then they're going to say you get to do that. So build it, or best case scenario, best recommendation is when you're setting up that agreement, think about that. So think about, can I use all of their marketing material, or what kind of marketing material? Can I use their trademark? How are they going to let me trademark it? Can I put it on my website? Can I put it on the product that I'm reselling or wholesaling or anything else? And kind of go through those scenarios and think, how am I actually going to want to do that? And then present it to them and say, here's what I want to do. Here's, let's put it in the agreement. And it makes it very clear. If you put it in the agreement and they agree to it, you're fine to go forward. If not, then which is usually the problem is people say, oh, we're going to go buy it. Sure, because we're buying it from them. They don't care if we use our brand. They don't care if we use our materials. And then the wholesaler or the reseller get into this argument of, well, no, you can't do it. Or, you're misrepresenting. We're not associated with you. And part of the problem is it also creates liability issue, because of now you haven't thought about that. And that's why I do it in the agreement. But if you haven't thought it out, let's say you go off and you make some, whether it's a racist comment, a sexist comment, or anything else, a bigoted comment, and it negatively reflects on the main brand, they're going to say, now you're negatively impacting us because you're showing an association with us and you're making statements that are contrary to what we want to do. Or you're going out and you're leveraging our brand and you're misrepresenting it, or you're just not representing it how we want, all of which then they say, we didn't agree to that. And now we're either going to sue you, or we're going to at least pull it, or we need to renegotiate, which are all bad things. So best thing is negotiate that ahead of time, figure out how you're going to use it, what you're going to use it for, get it in the agreement, and then you tend to avoid a lot of those issues otherwise.
Yeah.
One other thing that I'll hit on just is, and then I'll take a break, is the other one that a lot of times people get in a problem with is they'll go to China and they'll want to buy something wholesale, or what they think is wholesale. And the problem a lot of times, I know I'm picking on China, it happens other places too, is that you'll go to somebody and what they're doing is they have a contract or an agreement with a legitimate or reputable business that they are making the product. And then what they're doing is they're saying, great, now we've got this product, we've already got it set up. We're going to go and just sell it on the side. And we're not going to tell the people that we're making it for, we're selling it on site. So you go to them, buy it, and they say, yeah, you can use the product, you can use the material we have. And all they've done is copy it from the other people and not ask their permission. And it gets you in hot water, because then the legitimate company finds out and they're saying, you're infringing our patents, you're infringing our trademark, you're infringing our copyrights. We're going to sue you. And oh, by the way, tell us who you got this all from so we can go sue them, which is just creates a big mess. So the other one is, if you're buying it for someone, make sure they legitimately have the rights to what they're saying they have the rights to.
Yeah. And I think the other quick point here is, most clients, and, I've been gone through the same experience of scaling and selling a business. And when you sell a business, the trademarks, the copyright, like that becomes really important then too. And often, it's very difficult if you're in a negotiation and then all of a sudden you're being delayed by some of these things. So the sooner you do it, and the sooner you see someone like Devin, the better. Don't leave it to the end. Now, another quick one is, I know, it's a little bit outside of trademark. You've been a very successful entrepreneur in your own right. And that's why, like you said, you help people like you. But just on that, what have been some of the ways and the strategies that you've been able to successfully scale your revenue and your sales in your startup businesses?
Yeah, I'll give you a few. And some I think are, near universally applicable, and some are probably more specific to us. I mean, generally, universal referrals are always great. If you have people that are your current clients, oftentimes people overlook or don't think about them, but your current clients are a great source. Now, Don't just go and ask the people, hey, do you have any referrals that you could give me? The people, do you know anybody that will give me, or anybody that will give me money is not a good question. But if, a lot of times what we found is we kind of slowly bake that into the, the cake, so to speak, of we're just continually raising. We are here to help startups and other businesses. So in other small businesses. So if you know any, definitely feel free to share our information, those type of things. So you're slowly or bringing them along to where as that opportunity comes along and the other business are talking and say, oh, I got this great person that you should talk to, and here's their information. They can go to strategymeeting.com and they already remember it because you told them 10 times. Strategymeeting.com is how you reach out to me, and it makes it easy. So that's one that is probably pretty universal. Yeah. One that I'll give that, I keep it as a trade secret, but I'll give it to your audience, is one that I like is that people don't do very much and that we found to be successful. It's not our only one, but it is one that is free to, or nearly free to us, and is a great one, is we go onto social media, whether I love LinkedIn, so we do it a ton on LinkedIn. We also do it on Facebook. And as simple as it sounds, we search for people that are asking for patent attorneys, trademark attorneys, recommendations. Those are high intent individuals. They're looking and asking people that they know, do you know anybody that does with patents? Do you know anybody that does trademarks? And it astounds me how often those questions simply go unanswered. Nobody answers them. And if you would spend 20 minutes a day going and searching for whatever that they're looking for, do you know anybody that does marketing? Do you know anybody that sells product manufacturing, legal services? Across the board, people are looking and asking for them. They're high intent individuals. And all you have to do is say, yep, we do it. Come talk with us. Give them an easy way. With the other thing we do is we give them a call to action. So we don't just say, yeah, message me or private message me. I say, no, here's our contact. I know I keep saying strategy meet, but that's the easy way to do it. Go to this site, grab some time on my calendar. It makes it easy. And that one is one where it's as simple, as cheap, as inexpensive, because all it is a bit of your time or someone else's time than your company. And yet it creates a lot of sales because these people are looking for it.
Great. And where are you doing that search? You're doing it in the standard, you're doing it in Sales Nav, like where are you doing the search for those terms?
I'm on a we've tried it a few different ways. Usually it's just a standard. Just you can have, especially, Sales Nav is great more if you're trying to target people, you're trying to do a filtered search. But it's just as good if you were just having a LinkedIn account or a Facebook account or whichever one it is. You can do TikTok if your audience is on TikTok, wherever the people are, just go and search. And you can, a lot of times, give me an example of Facebook, we'll just do it once a day or, once a day, maybe once or twice a day, once in the morning, once in the evening. But we'll just say, all we want is that we filter it to basically give me the most, or put it in order from the most recent post and only show us this day's thing because we already looked yesterday. And so just those two filters, just get some keywords. We do like patent attorney or trademark attorney. Maybe, you do a few other keywords for your business and then just start to search those. And then we just have what is a near canned response. And we still customize it to the message, but we have kind of the template for what we're going to respond. And then we just simply take that and we craft it to what they're asking for. And then we put it out there. Doesn't take a lot of time, doesn't take a lot of effort. And yet, if you're looking for people that are wanting your services, why wouldn't you go and just tell them we can provide the services that you're asking for?
Yeah, look, that great suggestion, and one that I haven't, it sounds so obvious, right? But as you said, I'm sure not many people are doing it. I must admit, we used to and we've stopped doing it. So thanks for reminding me. Just quickly on your LinkedIn profile, it's very powerful. I know you've got a contact me as a call to action on your banner. So, how well is that working for you and how long have you had it up?
Yeah. So how well is it working? It's always a hard one because I don't know that we haven't set it up to be a unique URL. So it's always kind of that, unless you have it so that you can specifically track it. And to be honest, we have it all kind of dumped in the same strategy meeting funnel. And so when I put it on the podcast or I put it on LinkedIn, it tends to be now. You get anecdotal reference, right? So you have people, oh, I saw you on LinkedIn, caught your profile, saw that you do that. So it definitely is one where we get a reasonable amount of people, but it's because we also do a ton of work on LinkedIn. In other words, we're continually posting, we're continually putting out content. We will make comments. And so then when people see the comments, a lot of times they say, oh, well, who is this jerk? Or who is this great guy? Who made that insightful? It's whatever it is. And they go look on your profile. Now, if you're the jerk that they don't want to talk to, they probably are going to reach out. But if they're saying, oh, that's a good point or a good comment, or, oh, I really love their poll, they'll come and a lot of times check out your page. And so that's where we have it right on the banner. Click here. We have it tied right to, and again, we have it as simple as possible. Our mantra is we want to be like McDonald's in the sense, Now, not saying you have to, whether you like McDonald's or not, but the simpleness of going up, ordering it, it's quick service, it's easy service, and you get what you need. That's what we do. So click here, click the button, they go right to a counter, they grab some time, and then guess what? They talk with the real person and they can choose a time that's convenient for them. So we make it really easy. And that was when we found across a lot of platforms, LinkedIn, we do a ton of work to do a good profile for me that I'm continually posting on, continually putting content. And then when people check us out, it's a good call to action. So we found a good amount of success of people finding us organically that way, organically.
Yeah, no, look, I think it's a really good idea. And, once again, I think it's obvious when you see it, but it's not obvious for many that are doing it. So that's great. Last quick question here.
I'll give you this one thought just on that, because what people typically do on LinkedIn is they use it as a resume. And I'm like, I don't really need it as a resume. I need it as a way that I can network and contact people. So that's why, at least for me, when you look at my profile, it's set up to be so that it's almost not a sales page, but here's why I'm awesome. Here's why you should contact me. And here's all my information all the way. If you look at my profile, we have all of our flat fees right there. If you look at my profile, I have all my contact information. Here's all my content. And so it's set up to be a selling yourself, not just here's a resume that's a generic and the same as everybody else.
Totally agree. And look, I'm fortunate. I've had over 3 million views of my LinkedIn posts alone in the last 2 years, right? So for me, I'm never going to get that traction to my website. So to me, and even in search now, and your posts are indexed and they're searchable on Google as well. Right. LinkedIn, if you're B2B, yes, definitely. And I talked about the sales machine before. So a bit of a shameless plug. If you just go to paulhigginsmentoring.com, you can find out more about that. But yeah, the same thing, it's completely changed my life. Post-transplant, I was like, how do I market myself? LinkedIn, and very much of the same strategies that you're doing now. Last quick question before we go to that sip of beer in the sales habits section is, what about podcasts? Copyright of podcasts. I'm a podcaster. There's lots of us out there. What are your thoughts on copywriting your podcasts?
I typically recommend against, I'll give you the exception, typically recommend against a copyright. I typically recommend to do a trademark, and I'll give you the reason why. Okay. Because podcasts, so copyrights are going to protect the actual episode or the actual podcast. And so unless you have a podcast or an episode that is just one that you get a ton of downloads on, that went viral or has a ton of reposting or that, such that particular episode is valuable, usually what happens is it's not any given episode, it's the branding of the podcast itself that is the value. In other words, people are going not because there's a one given episode they're going to listen to, but it's because, hey, I love this podcast episode, and so I'm going to keep coming back because I like their content. And so the brand is a thing that builds up a lot of the value as opposed to any given episode. Now, if you have an episode that gets 10 million views or 10 million downloads or whatever listens, then you should probably copyright that one because it is valuable in and of itself. But if it's more of just that consistent audience that you cultivated and they're continue listening, then I would do the trademark of the actual name of the podcast and probably the logo. In other words, you can do the logo and you can also do the words. Those are two separate trademarks, and then you're protecting that. So now if somebody comes along and rips off your podcast, if they go and steal one episode, you're going to say, so what? It's not that big a deal. But if they come along and they say, oh, I'm going to make an icon or a logo that's almost the same as theirs, or I'm going to do it the same or similar name, then you have what's more valuable protected. Yeah.
And then the other quick question building on that is geography, right? Like, so, most of my clients or listeners are in the US, Canada, and then Australia, right, as the top sort of 3. So when you look to trademark, do you look to do it globally? Do you look to do it in the countries that are getting the most downloads? Well, what's your view on that?
Yeah, I mean, usually it's where you're getting the most downloads, and that's universal, whether it's podcasts or anything else. And so because I'll give you the typical scenario. Usually a client comes in my office and say, I've got this great brand and we want to protect it in every country and throughout the world. And we just want to make sure we have it all locked down. So, well, we can do that. Let me walk you through a little bit of the cost. There are 80 countries. I can't remember now the list that are the major countries. And it's about, a couple $1,000s per country. So if you multiply that, you're now in hundreds of thousands of dollars.
Yeah.
And you're not, are you really worried about this, minute little country over here that nobody buys your product or nobody listens to? Probably not. And so I usually counsel, take where is the bulk of your audience. And let's say, as an example, your podcast, you had Well, let's say you had 90% in the US, 5% Canada, and 1% in Australia. Now, I don't think that's the case, but we'll make that as an example. Then you're probably, honestly, you're not your biggest market. 1% of the thing, you're better to invest in making sure you have it locked down in the 90%, maybe in the 5 or 10% marketplace. Focus on where the bulk is. And then for the other ones, then you just say, you know what, if somebody comes along, rips us off in these smaller markets and we really don't have any value or traction, so be it, and focus on those big countries. Now, as you grow and as you get bigger and as you have more of a budget, you can continue to expand your brand. But where I would definitely start is where you have your biggest marketplace.
Yeah. And I think the other thing is go back to those 2 rules that you said before, which is, similar and also descriptive as well, because I think everyone thinks, well, I know in the past, well, I can just trademark anything. It's not. And that's what you said at the start, which is really important. So let's go now into the sales habits. So the first one is, what sales habit helps you to be successful every day?
Yeah, I'll give 2. I know you only asked for what habit, but I'll give you a couple. One is a very generic one is consistency. In other words, I think that's across the board. Everybody needs to be consistent, because what generally happens, especially in, I'd say, service-based industries, which the law firm is you get a feast and famine. When you're feasting, you don't really worry about that. Worry about you be consistent because you've got too much work to keep up with already, and so you're not going to worry about it. And then after you get done with all that work, then you get into the famine area where, we don't have any work. We don't have anything coming in. And so now we've got to really go out and push that and go do it. And so then you make a big push and then you get in the feast again. And it's kind of that one, but it doesn't make for a consistent growth or consistent business because you're always feast and then you're famine, and it kind of can hinder it. So I think that one is just being consistent. And then the other one is just to look for, kind of like I'm giving the LinkedIn, we do some of the other ones is, there are very saturated marketplaces that are just difficult to break through the noise. Now, if you have a lot of marketing budget and you have a lot of time, great, go do SEO, or go do SEO you should never do, but go do Google paid AdWords. If you look at the legal industry, there are a lot of them that are very expensive clicks that it's just going to be hard. So you've got to look for the lower hanging fruit of, hey, are there other places that are on LinkedIn? Are there other places on Facebook? Are there other places that I can find that people are looking that I don't have to pay a ton of money for? They're going to have the same or even better impact. And kind of look, I hate the cliche to think outside the box, but look for those that are the low-hanging fruit that aren't the ones that are always the well-trafficked one, because the ones that are well-trafficked are so much harder to break through the noise versus if you can find those areas that people tend to overlook, those are ones that can oftentimes have a much bigger impact.
Great. And technology, what's a piece of technology that you use to help you accelerate your sales?
Yeah, I'm a huge fan of automation. Now, don't get me wrong. There's automation that I absolutely hate and think that is done poorly. Like when you call a customer service up on the phone and they make you go through or dial 10 different people only to get to the wrong person, and then they transfer you, and then you get hung up and you have to start over. Bad example.
Or you get a message to say that, this is where you can go to on the website, and they hang up on you. And I'm like,
I called you because I can't get my answers on the website. So that is a really poor example of automation. Yeah. Now, there are good examples, and we do a lot of it, which is automation, but it's one that is set up to free up our time so we can have those personal touches. In other words, if I'm looking and I looked and said, hey, we do the same process for every client every time we walk them through, we get this information, and then we give them this email, and then we give this. Well, how much of that can we automate? Well, we can automate here. We really need to have the personal touch here. And so we do it via CRM. There's one that's for the legal. We used to do it with HubSpot. We switched over to one that's a little bit more customized for the legal atmosphere or the legal industry, but I'm a big fan of automation to free up your time to increase your personal touch, which kind of tend to go or conflicting. But if you can automate the things that you don't need to have the personal touch, it allows you to have that personal touch. And then people really appreciate the personal touch.
Yeah. Brilliant. And look, I'm using a product called BombBomb at the moment, which is very similar. You can automate a lot of the video. So it's you, etc. But there's ways to do it that can really bring in that personal touch as well.
I love BombBomb. I've been using it for about 3 years now, and I'm a big fan of it.
Yeah. Brilliant. So the next one is your best source of leads. I know you spoke about referrals before, but what's your best source of leads? It may be referrals, but maybe something else.
Yeah, I would say referrals and current clients, but I'll expand on that a bit in the sense that one of our better or bigger things, I'll put that aside, is we do a lot of upsells. Now, Upsells are, I don't like when you go to the website and you have a pop-up that says, hey, you can add this to your cart. That's not a good example of upsells, because now you're just trying to get more money out of them and it doesn't provide the value. But we look at both current, either clients that are coming in that are new or that are recurring clients and say, now, what is their next phase? Or what is either the previous phase of the journey before they get to us that we could expand on, or what is the next thing they're going to need after this? What we would really recommend that we can provide that value. And then we look and say, okay, now how can we upsell them? Not in the bad sense. Upsell always kind of makes it sound like you're just trying to extract more money, but how can we help them further along their journey? And then we try and interweave that again, kind of those breadcrumbs or baking it into the cake such that it's a natural progression. Okay, we've helped you on these things. We started planting seeds. This is what you're going to do next. Then when we finish this, hey, here's the next thing that's a natural progression. And that kinds to be a bigger, I don't know if it's exactly lead generation in the sense that it's not bringing new leads in, but it's bringing in more business, which helps the bottom line.
Yeah, brilliant. And so the last question is one action. So what's one action we can take today to 10 times our sales?
10 times our sales, that's a good bar. That's a hard one. I would say probably the one I already touched on, which is consistency. And it's, seems like a cliche. Everybody looks for the secret. And yet I would say most of the time, if you're consistently I guess I'll back up. Putting a system in place that you are having ability to cultivate leads is one thing. I'll give that as a better answer, which is, what I always had to laugh. Legal industry is absolutely horrible at that. Yes. They will have somebody call them up on the phone. They'll say, hey, I want some legal service. And then you never hear from them again, or it takes a week or two to get back to them. And you're saying, what happened? And is this how it's going to be? And so you do all this work to find those people, and then you never continue to cultivate them or follow up or have those systems in place. And so I think as an easy one is, if you figure out the next step after you talk with them that you can continue to keep them moving forward and continue to make progress, systematize that, and you're going to recapture a lot of the leads that you already had, but you let fall through the cracks because they didn't right away give you the money the day that they came in, but they still are really high intent. So I would say figure out how you're going to keep the people that are interested moving forward and actually capture those and cultivate them.
Yeah, look, great advice and great advice across the board. And I want everyone just to pause for one moment and just answer this question. How can you find out more and ask Devin questions, right? So I think he's given you a couple of hints during the podcast, but if you haven't got it by now, it's strategymeeting.com. Go there and you can tell he's a very personable guy. He has got brilliant advice, and I strongly recommend if you've got something specific, like for me, my podcast at the moment is not trademarked. So, I'll be jumping on with Devin to talk more about that. But for you specifically, just think about what the risks you are, especially if you're looking to scale and sell your business, and then reach out to Devin because he is such a great guy and also very smart as well. So, Devin, absolute honor having you on today.
Hey, it's been a pleasure. It's been an awesome and fun conversation. Appreciate you having me.
Brilliant. Thanks, Devin. Bye.
Bye.
So I love that interview with Devin. I loved how the fact that he just brought it down to practical, simple terms. So you know how you can reach out to him. That's right, strategymeeting.com. I love that he's got that URL. I complimented him post the podcast, but do go and protect yourself. I'm going to talk to him about my podcast, but there must be something that you've got that you know is itching away at you, and he can simply solve it for you. As I said, there's in the show notes, there's really good summary there for you. Also, all the links, so you can go and get them. You can get the full transcript. You can go and request that at paulhigginsmentoring.com. Why don't you tell other people? Because there's lots of people out there that are looking for help in this space, and Devin might be just the right person for them. So why don't you share it, and also share it on your socials to thank Devin for the support that he's given you through this podcast. Check out all my solo shows. There's a lot of great individual shows there that can help you. And the last thing, as always, is to take action to accelerate your sales.
I'm fired up after today's episode. What about you? But hey, before you go, learning is just one piece of the puzzle. Now it's time to put today's strategy into action. Head over now to today's show page at paulhigginsmentoring.com/podcast and share how you'll put it into action. Be sure to head over to your favorite podcast platform and subscribe, rate, and review the show. Tell me what your favorite episode is. And don't wait 1 minute more to gain access to your pulse check at paulhigginsmentoring.com. This could be the difference between struggling to get more leads and making this next quarter your best one yet.